The mating ceremony had begun. Every glance mattered. Every step was weighed. Rank breathed like smoke in the room. Nobles near the dais, some megas near the doors, everyone pretending not to judge and judging anyway. A man in a torn cloak stood just inside the hall, close enough to smell honey cakes but too far to be seen as anything but trouble. He had the look of a beggar, boots cut by miles, hair rain-wet, a satchel like an empty stomach. Yet his back was straight. He bore humiliation the way an old tree bears lightning, without bending. He said nothing as a guard moved him along with 2 fingers and a small curl of the lip. "Who let that in?" asked Celine, her voice sweet as winter. Dark hair, fine bones, dress stitched like moonlight. A noble's daughter. She did not bother to lower her voice. "This is a sacred night, not a charity." People laughed to please her. The beggar didn't meet their eyes. He looked instead at the dais where, by tradition, the Alpha King would appear at the last bell to choose his Luna. He searched the faces as if he could read souls the way others read faces. When someone bumped his shoulder hard, he absorbed it as if he had been waiting all day for worse. The far end of the hall, an Omega girl carried a tray of chalices no one would remember tomorrow. Lila had a steady way of moving and a quiet face the nobles forgot as soon as they saw it. Her dress was clean but thin. Her braid was plain. Her eyes, though, were not plain at all. Soft blue, serious. She saw the beggar wince when a drunk lord tripped over his boot and sent him to one knee. She set the tray down and crossed the hall before sense could stop her. "Careful," she said, kneeling with him. "The floor is hungry. It eats dignity first." He huffed, almost a laugh, then hid it. He kept his head down in the old way of men who had learned that pride can be a leash. His hands were large, scarred, clean despite the dirt on his sleeves. "Thank you," he said. Celine's smile sharpened. "Oh, look, pity seeks a husband. Perhaps the Alpha will choose her at once." A Luna with dirt under her nails. The nobles laughed again. Lila stood slowly. "My hands clean your plates," she said in the same even tone she used to quiet a pup. "If there is dirt, it is yours, my lady." Color rose in Celine's cheeks. She opened her mouth, but the last bell tolled, a deep iron sound that shook the banners. The great doors swung wide. The Alpha did not enter. A ripple of surprise moved across the hall like a wind through grass. The steward hurried to the dais with a stiff smile that said the plan had changed and surely no one would mind. "By tradition," he began, "the council." The doors boomed again. Guards turned. The nobles turned. Even Celine's anger turned. 2 wet travelers stepped in. First all anyone saw was the mud. Then they saw the crest sewn under the mud, and breath left bodies in a rush. It was the royal mark, worn small, hidden and real. The smaller traveler pulled back his hood. "My lord is delayed," he announced. "He asks to watch the ceremony among the people." Gasps. Whispers. The council's faces pinched like doors. The steward forced out the words that would keep peace. "So be it." The smaller traveler moved aside. The taller one, face shadowed, jaw unshaven, did not come forward. He melted into the hall, near the pillar where the beggar stood. For a strange heartbeat it seemed the 2 men looked at one another and mirrored a smile neither was wearing. Wine flowed. The circle of hopeful mates glowed like roses. Celine took the center with every inch of a queen, her perfume a promise. Lila slipped back toward the trays, holding her dignity like a frail candle in wind. She had taken 3 steps when a lord she had never met blocked her way, his mouth hot with drink. "Your name," he said, swaying. so I can forget it again. Lila, she said. Lila, he repeated, testing it. His gaze slid past her to the beggar and sharpened. He raised his voice. Come then, Lila. Show us your taste. Kiss the floor rat for luck. Laughter. A drumbeat the musicians did not start. Lila felt the hall lean toward her, hungry for sport. She breathed once, twice, and turned to the beggar. Forgive them, she said. They are not mine to forgive, he said. She held out her hand. Then forgive me. I should have helped faster. His eyes lifted. They were a strange gray, old as winter and stubborn as stones. He took her hand and stood. Murmurs shifted. Touch meant witness. Witness meant responsibility. Did you see that? Celine said, delighted. The Omega picks her litter. The beggar bowed a fraction, a soldier's bow without a soldier's crest. Some litters raise kings, he said softly. Before anyone could answer, the steward clapped for silence and called the first pair to the dais for blessing. The night moved forward on wheels of custom. Yet the memory of Lila's hand in the beggar's hand clung to the beams like smoke. Hours later, when the candles had burned to fat tears and the elders had blessed every union and stared down every mistake, the smaller traveler returned to the dais. My lord asks for one last blessing, he said. He will receive it in the old way. The doors opened a third time. The beggar walked down the aisle. Lila's tray shook. Celine's lip curled. The elders leaned close like old wolves over a fresh scent. The beggar stopped at the foot of the steps and lifted his chin. The hall stilled as if a wind had died. He reached up and took off his torn cloak. Under it was a plain shirt bound with a leather thong. He pulled the thong loose. The shirt opened. A chain lay against his skin. On it hung a seal only the throne could wear. The gray in his eyes turned to steel. The man and the beggar became one shape at last. A sound rose, half gasp, half growl. The steward went white. Counsel went colder. Celine went still. The Alpha King had stood among them all night in rags. Climbed the steps. Lila's breath hurt. The elders stared. He turned, looked over the people who had mocked him, defended him, and weighed him like meat. Forgive the trick, he said. I had to see truth without crowns. Silence. Then a brittle laugh. Celine stepped into the light like a blade. Majesty, she purred and sank to one knee, slow, perfect, practiced. Forgiveness is for those beneath you. We all serve the throne. The Alpha looked at her, then past her. His gaze found Lila near the pillar. He did not smile. He did not blink. He said clear and simple, I choose the Omega who told the truth when it cost her. The hall broke. Celine's face emptied. The nobles roared. The elders rose as one. The steward choked on a title and could not finish it. Lila could not move. Her heart beat against her ribs as if it wanted out. The Alpha stretched his hand toward her. Lila felt the weight of 100 eyes, 1,000 warnings, and one wide door. She walked. When she reached him, her fingers trembled, but she put them in his anyway. The first elder spoke it into the hall. We reject this bond. The Alpha turned to him. Then you reject me. The elder's voice was quiet and deadly. We reject what breaks the laws that keep our kind alive. Candles hissed. The banners sagged in the heat of attention. Lila's mind went blank with fear. The Alpha's hand did not shake. Then, he said, we will write a new law. and somewhere a wolf beyond the walls lifted its head and howled, long and low, like the start of a storm that would not end quickly. If you were in Lila's shoes, would you have stood by Roland after seeing him attacked, or would you have run to save yourself? Drop your answer below, and while you're here, subscribe so you never miss the next twist in their journey. Chapter 1. Dawn. The hall smelled of ash and honey, spilled wax cooling on stone. The Alpha, Roland, the steward had whispered at last, Roland, Roland, stood on the balcony with rain on his hair and the whole valley under his hand. Lila stood 3 steps behind him and to the side, where an Omega would never think to stand. She had not slept. She had washed her hands until the skin ached and the smell of wine left her nails. Her mind replayed the night until every moment blurred. Celine's laugh, the elder's verdict, Roland's palm, warm and rough, closing on hers. "Why did you do it?" she asked, voice small in the bright cold. "The disguise." Roland watched the fog lift from the river. "A king sees best when he is no one. You saw how cruel they were." "I saw something else." He turned. "You." Heat crept up her neck. "I only did what was right." He looked past her to where the doors stood open and servants waited with breakfast they could not taste for nerves. "When I was a boy, my father told me, choose the one who will tell you the truth when you least want to hear it. Last night you told a room full of wolves that their pride had dirt under it." "I didn't mean to speak," she admitted. "It just came out. The best truths do." A soft knock. The steward, pale with strain, bowed low. "Majesty, the council convenes at noon. They ask that you arrive without escort." Lila stepped back on instinct. Roland did not move. "Tell them I will arrive with the woman I chose." The steward's throat worked. "Majesty, they..." Roland's eyes cooled. "We value your service, Joran. Deliver the message." Joran fled. Lila stared at the rain. "You don't have to come," Roland said, softer now. "They will try to wound you with words that taste like law." "I've had worse words," she said. They were not wrapped in gold, but they bit the same. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Stay close to me." She thought, "I already am," and then hated how fast that truth had formed. By noon, the council hall was full. Elders sat like carved stone. Celine sat in the back row and watched her nails. Nobles lined the sides to smell blood. Lila stood behind Roland's chair and kept her face blank. "Majesty," said Elder Malin, voice smooth as oiled wood, "we honor the throne. We despise deceit." Roland folded his hands. "Name the lie you smell. You dressed as a beggar in a sacred hall. I dressed as my people. You broke ceremony. I revealed hearts. You insulted rank. I exposed rot." A hiss rose, then died under the elder's lifted palm. "And then you broke the oldest line. You chose an Omega to be Luna. I chose a mate whose worth is not borrowed from her father." Malin's eyes flicked to Lila. "Child, do you know what a Luna must be? She must be iron without cruelty, soft without weakness, voice without vanity. She carries the pack's heart in public and bleeds in private. You have been told your whole life to be small. How will you carry us?" Lila's mouth dried. She heard her mother's voice from years ago, speak steady or not at all. "I have carried scorn since I could speak," she said. "Scorn is heavy and I am still standing. The pack is heavier, I will grow stronger." That is what wolves do. Something like surprise moved in Malin's sharp face. "Bold tongue." "True tongue," Roland said. "You wanted honesty. Here it stands. A murmur ran the room, followed by Celine's laugh, bright and vicious. "Honesty feeds no army," she said, "and the packs to the west smell weakness. They hear we will be led by an Omega who can't afford a ribbon." Roland turned his head slowly. "Celine, if you crave a crown, make yourself worthy of one. I expected to be chosen." Her smile was ice. "Instead, I was humiliated." Lila swallowed. "We all were weighed last night. Some were found lacking." "We all were," Lila said before she could stop herself. "If we let rank tell us whom to protect." The air shifted. Some nobles looked away. A few looked at Lila as if seeing her for the first time. The elder tapped the table. "Enough. There is only one way to cut this knot. Prove the bond." Roland's jaw flexed. "Trial? The old law," Malin said. 3 trials and 3 nights. Strength. Trust. Oath. If you fail, you renounce the claim. If you take the trials and stand, the pack shuts its mouths." Celine smiled like a fox. "And if he refuses?" "Then we strip his title and cede a region until a proper Luna can be found." A growl rippled, low and dangerous. Roland stood. "We will take your trials." Lila's heart broke into a faster run. He glanced back, silently asking. She nodded. The hall breathed as if someone had opened a great window to winter. "Tonight," Malin said, "at the edge of the gray forest. Strength. Bring witnesses. Bring faith." Celine's smile did not reach her eyes. "Bring rope. To carry the Omega home if she falls." Lila met her gaze. "Keep your rope, my lady. You may need it for your pride." Celine's pupils narrowed. Roland's hand found Lila's at his side, a touch like a vow. The elders watched, measuring a kingdom's next 3 nights. Chapter 2. Roland did not return to the keep. He led Lila out of the south gate and through a stand of birch to a camp hidden in the bracken, small fires like watchful eyes and canvas tents stitched with care. Men and women looked up and grinned, not with court polish but with relief. "Welcome back, Captain," said a woman with arms like rope and a scar that split her eyebrow. "Captain," Lila echoed. Roland's mouth tilted. When a king walks in rags, he walks with those who know how to stitch. The woman bowed slightly to Lila. "Marin, I mend more than cloth. If you hurt, I will find it." "I'm fine," Lila lied. Marin's gaze flicked to the tremble in Lila's fingers. "You are brave," she said. "It takes more work to heal brave people. They think wounds are shame." Lila's throat closed. She opened her palm to air. Marin reached without fuss and held it between both of hers until Lila's hand forgot to shake. They ate stew that tasted like thyme and smoke, and Lila learned more about the man who had been a beggar by choice. Roland had built this little world years ago when he realized one cannot listen from a throne as well as one can listen from a fire. He moved among them like a brother. They teased him. They obeyed him. They would not let him lift a crate. At nightfall they walked to the gray forest. The elders were already there with a half-circle of lanterns that drew moths and lies. Celine sat her horse and watched with hungry calm. Crowds stayed back where the roots began, the old trees keeping their secrets. Malin raised his staff. "Strength," he said. "Not only muscle. Strength is what you do when pain takes your choices." This trial has 2 parts. First, the alpha hunts and brings back meat for the pack without shifting. Second, the chosen mate walks the old rope. Whispers. Mothers gathered their children closer. The old rope was strung between two oaks over a ravine carved by water and time. Lila had crossed it once at 12 to prove she wasn't a baby. She had fallen, snapped her wrist, and had to climb out on her own. She had not gone near it since. Roland stripped his coat, rolled his sleeves, and took a bow, quiver, and a knife, no more. He vanished into the trees with two shadows, Dax, his scout, and Silence. Lila went with Marin to stare at the rope like an enemy she would have to have dinner with. Marin touched the knot. Step where it creaks least. Hear the rope, not your fear. I hear only fear, Lila said. Good. It keeps you from dancing. Lila huffed a laugh that hurt. Celine rode closer. You can still step aside, she said sweetly. No one will judge you for staying alive. No, Lila said. Her voice did not wobble. They will judge me for 1,000 other things. I might as well choose the reason. It was a small victory to watch Celine's pretty mouth thin. Dark came fast. Wolves in the trees sang to the moon. Roland returned with a stag across his shoulders, bow slung, knife clean. He set the meat at the elder's feet without breathing hard, as if the forest were his first language. Murmurs changed shape. Some faiths are won by blood offered without speech. Second, Malin said. The rope? Lanterns moved. The ravine opened like a mouth. Layla's stomach dropped. The rope stretched into shadows, damp and patient, old fibers singing softly in the night wind. You can turn back, Roland said, quiet enough that only she would hear. We will find another way. There is no other way, she said. Not for women like me. We only ever get the way in front of us. He took her face in both hands for one heartbeat. Then look at me the whole way. I can't walk the rope and look at you. Then hear me. Every step I will speak. When you lose me, look up. She nodded because if she opened her mouth, she would cry. She did not want to give Celine tears. She took off her shoes. The rope bit her feet like truth. She gripped the line above with both hands, arms shaking already. Roland stood at the edge, so close the lantern made halos on his hair. Left foot, he said. Shift weight. Right foot. Don't rush. There is no song with a chorus here, only notes. 3 steps. 4. The ravine's breath rose, wet and old. Lila's teeth knocked and she bit her tongue to close them. The rope creaked. Someone laughed. She knew that laugh, Celine's truly happy sound. And then Lila wasn't hearing anyone because fear had flooded her ears with salt. Lila, Roland said, voice steady as a heartbeat. Hear me. You carried a tray with 10 chalices and never spilled a drop. This is the same. Replace wine with breath. She let out a breath she didn't know she held. 2 more steps. The rope dipped. The world swung. She clung, eyes squeezed shut. Look at me, he said. She forced them open. His face was calm, mouth quirked. Made no sense to see humor here, and yet it fed some starving part of her. If you fall, he said lightly, I'll jump. You're the king. Then I'll jump nicer. Got her to laugh in a broken puff. She took 6 more steps. In the middle, the rope swayed hardest, old fibers complaining. Her arms burned. Her feet felt like raw meat. The sound of water far below jabbed at the part of her mind that liked to imagine what could go wrong. She made the mistake of glancing at the black under her. The world snapped into a spin. She gasped. Her right foot slipped. Rope bit both palms. Pain lit white behind her eyes. She hung, knees banging wood, breath gone. Lila. It was not a command. It was not even a plea. It was her name, said the way someone says home. You are not alone. Left knee over. Hook it. Good. Now, right? She did. Now breathe. I am here. She pulled herself back to standing, slow and shaking. When she stood, the ravine roared again, but farther away somehow, as if she had locked a door. She took 3 steps, then 3 more. The last 7 were the worst because she knew the end was near and her body wanted to rush. She did not. She crossed like an old woman learning to dance. When she stepped onto ground, the crowd made a sound she would never forget, a single held breath released like wind in a pine wood. Roland's hand was there. She took it and nearly crumpled, and he held her up without making a show of it. Malin's staff thumped earth. Strength, he said. Past. Celine's smile was ruin. Barely. Roland looked at Lila like there was no one else here. She looked back like she had known him all her life. The rope behind them swayed itself to stillness. Far below, water kept going, unconcerned with law. Chapter 3. Trust was the second trial. Not tricks, Malin had said. Trust. The thing that keeps wolves from eating one another when the snow is deep. They met on the sacred meadow where the grass grows in circles and no one knows why. The moon was a silver coin in a dark palm. Pack gathered at the edge, heads bare, weapons left behind. Even Celine had come without her jeweled knife, though Lila suspected she had another blade hidden like a thought. Each will be blindfolded, Malin said, and led into the circle by the other. Each will be asked a question. The answer must be true. If a lie is told, the circle will sound. The sacred ground had its own way of speaking. Stones split in frost with a sound like bones, trees groaned in summer with a sound like old grief. If a lie was told here, the earth itself would know. Roland turned, and Lila let him tie cloth over her eyes. The world went soft and dark, a womb with wind in it. He slid his hand into hers and led her, slow as a prayer. Her feet memorized roots. Her ears memorized his breath. They stopped. He let go. Her skin screamed without his palm. Lila, Malin said. Who do you fear more tonight, the council or the woman who wants the throne? Neither, she said. I fear myself. Murmurs edged the circle. Why? Because I know how easy it is to tell yourself a sweet lie. If I am not careful, I will start to believe rank is worth more than kindness. That is poison. It goes down smooth. Silence swallowed even the moths. The ground did not crack. A lark called once from the meadow grass, as if agreeing. Roland, Malin said. Who do you love more tonight, your pack or the woman you chose? Lila's empty eyes flooded. She wanted to pull the cloth down and run. She could not move. She heard Roland breathe once, then again. My pack, he said. The earth stayed whole. Lila could not tell if the snap in her chest was relief or ache. Malin's voice was gentler than it had been all week. Why? Because I cannot protect her if I betray them. If I fail them, I will fail her twice. The ground hummed like a hive. The circle accepted it. Lila trembled in the dark and hated that part of her had wanted him to say her name. Then she loved him a little worse for telling the truth that would keep them both alive. They removed the cloths. The night looked different. The stars seemed nearer. Roland met her gaze and did not try to make the wound in his words softer. She did not try to hide that it had cut her and steadied her both. Malin nodded to himself, as if a tree he had planted years ago had finally borne fruit. "Trust," he said. "Past." Celine yawned. "How tender." She stood. "Tomorrow will ruin your sweet vows. Oath changes people." Roland's hand found Lila's so quickly it felt inevitable. "Only if they wanted to change," he said. They walked back through the meadow with the pack behind them, a river that could drown or save them depending on which way the wind wanted to blow. Would you have trusted a stranger the way Lila trusted the beggar that night? Or would fear have kept you silent? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see what happens next. Chapter 4. Word ran ahead of them like a fox. By dawn the keep knew 2 trials had been met. By noon the market knew. By evening the western outposts had heard, and a raven peeled off from its murder to carry the news farther. Lila tried to sleep. She could not. When she closed her eyes she saw the rope. When she opened them she saw Celine's smile. She walked to the old cloister in the inner yard and sat where stones had learned the shape of knees over centuries. "Do you pray?" said a voice that was not Roland's. "Celine." Lila kept her body still. "Sometimes." "What do you ask for?" "Courage. And bread." Celine laughed. "Honest to the last crumb." "You came to laugh?" "I came to warn you." Lila turned. Celine's face in the shade was all angles and polish. "You want me to fail," Lila said. "Yes, but I do not want you to die. There is a difference." Lila believed her. It was one of the odd things Celine had, a moral line, thin as hair and firm as wire. "How would I die?" The 3rd trial invites blood. Oath is taken on the sacred ground, and rivals may call challenge. I will not, because I am done with this game. But others will. Who? Celine looked toward the shadow where a guard dozed on his feet. Elder Dorn's nephew. He thinks himself a wolf. He is a dog with a blade. Her mouth twisted. He will try to draw the alpha away from you. If he succeeds, another will aim for the soft thing left. Me. Celine shrugged. If you live, do not become me. It is very tiring. She rose, smoothed her dress, and walked away smelling of mint and fear. Lila sat very still until the sun slid behind the west tower. Then she went to find Roland. She found him in the training yard, shirt off, sweat dark on his back, a staff humming in his hands like a struck bell. He moved with the grace of a man who had been trained since he learned to walk, body remembering lessons faster than mind. She told him what Celine had said. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded once. Dorn wants to cut me in public without getting blood on his name. He will use the boy. We will not stand where he wants. We cannot refuse a challenge. We can refuse to be fooled by it. What if he draws you away? I will not step where he tells me. You say that now, she said, and did not try to make it a scold. But if a knife points at me, you will move. I will move into the knife, he said. Not away from you. It was both the best and worst thing he could have said. She held his eyes until they ached and said, Do not be brave in a foolish way. Be brave like water. Water cracks rock by being patient. He smiled, small and tired. You sound like Marin. I sound like a woman who wants to keep what she has been given. He put the staff aside and took her hand. We do this together, he said. Even when a crowd tries to pull us apart. She watched his fingers around hers and thought how fast the body learns a language it did not expect to need. Chapter 5. The sacred ground looked older on the night of the oath. The grass in the strange circles lay flat as hair brushed by a giant hand. The stones along the rim had a wet shine that was not water. Packs surrounded the meadow with a murmur like tide. The elders stood at the stone table that had held 100 oaths and 100 betrayals. Roland and Lila walked into the center and knelt. Malin cut their palms with a clean blade and pressed them along the stones so blood drew a new line over older lines. The metal smelled like rain on iron. "Speak," Malin said. Roland's voice was low and not for the crowd. "I will be strength without cruelty, speech without lies, and power without vanity. I will hold you safe if it breaks me. I will not buy peace by selling your soul. If I fail in pride, cut me. If I fail in fear, lift me. If I fail in love, forgive me." Lila's throat would not open. Then it did. "I will be soft without weakness, iron without cold. I will carry the pack's joy in public and its grief in private. I will tell you the thing no one else will say. I will not be small to make others comfortable, and I will not be loud to make myself big. If I fail in pride, break me. If I fail in fear, stand me up. If I fail in love, remind me of who we were the first night." The ground did not crack. The circles in the grass lifted a little in a wind no one felt. The old stone drank 2 oaths like wine and said nothing. "By the ancient law," Malin began. "Challenge!" shouted a voice from the edge. Dorn's nephew, bright-cheeked, drunk on courage he had found in his uncle's pocket. He leaped down the slope with a strip of silver in one hand and a grin that had never once been corrected by consequence. Roland did not stand. He turned his head slowly. "Not refuse," he said. "But the law says you prove need. Why do you challenge?" The boy blinked. No one had asked him for a reason. Because she is Omega. Because it shames the pack." "Need, not envy," Malin snapped. "Because," he cast around and found Celine's eyes. She did not move. "Because outside packs are watching. They will think us weak." "Then fight me," Roland said, still kneeling. "Not her. If you fear our image, challenge the one who holds it." The boy faltered. His breath went short. This was not how he had seen it in his head. He had seen a crowd roaring, a girl screaming, himself a hero without sweat. "Choose," Roland said, finally standing. The boy lunged because that is what boys do when a choice gets too quiet. Roland sidestepped and caught his wrist, turned, and sent him sprawling. The strip of silver flew and disappeared in grass. Crowd hissed, not for blood but for stupidity. Dorn stood. "Majesty, the law has been met," Malin cut in. No need was shown. "The oath stands." Dorn's mouth flattened. The boy scrambled up, face burning. He looked for Celine and found her watching the moon with a boredom so sharp it cut. Lila's heart was just settling when the second blade came. And not from the ring. From the trees. A shadow moved wrong and the hair rose on her neck. She pulled Roland without thinking. A thrown knife cut the air where his throat had been. Shouts. Wolves shifted. Guards surged. Marin tackled Lila to the grass and covered her with a body hard as oak. Roland's roar split the meadow. Dax melted into shadow like smoke. "Hold!" Malin thundered, and somehow the command held a few back. "No blood on Oath Night." "Tell that to the cowards in the trees," Dax said, and dragged a man out of a bramble by his hair. He had a raven feather in his collar and a coin from the western pack sewn into his cuff. Celine laughed once, short and mean. "Well, At least our enemies have taste. Malin's staff struck the stone. Break the circles and go to war while you still remember why, he said. Or hold your line and be smarter tomorrow. Roland's breath sawed. Lila crawled out from under Marin and touched his arm. He calmed like a horse that knows which hand holds the rein. He looked around the meadow and knew in a single sweep who was with him and who was waiting for him to bleed. He lifted Lila's hand high. The oath stands, he said. The earth seemed to sigh long and tired and then settle. Chapter 6. Keep did not sleep. Camp did not sleep. The wolves did not sleep. Lila did not sleep. She lay in Roland's tent, not in his arms. He had offered and she had refused, not for virtue, but because if she felt safe she would fall apart, and listened to his breathing as he sat with a map and a knife. They will try again, he said when he realized she was awake. Of course. They never try only once. I know. He looked up, startled into smiling. You say that like someone who has survived a long time. I am 24, she said. That is a long time to be told to be small. He set the knife down. I will not ask you to be small. I know. The silence between them was not heavy. It was something like a roof. Tell me something true that is not about duty, he said. She thought. When I was 9, I ate an apple standing on a wall and cried because it was so good and I knew I would never have another that good again. He breathed out a laugh. When I was 11, I was supposed to recite the rule of succession and I recited a poem about horses instead, and my tutor left the room to laugh where I could not see. I would have liked that tutor. He died with my father. They were quiet then. He turned the knife. She watched the shadow the blade made on the canvas. Dawn came cold and pale. When light was thin enough to be called day, a runner arrived at the tent. Majesty, he said, out of breath. Ravens at the west ridge. For flags. They say they will parley. Roland stood, already a king again. They will not. They will measure our noise. Noise. Crowd, fear, movement, pride. Put a mirror up to a wolf, he will look at himself for longer than he should. He buckled his belt. Lila watched his hands do it. She felt a strange surge of lightness, not joy exactly, but the thing you feel at the start of a road you chose. Come with me, he said. To the ridge. To the kitchens. Then the ridge. She blinked. Kitchens? He smiled. Yes. If we are watched, we will be watched being ourselves. And not a show. They spent an hour carrying bread and soup to people who had guarded doors all night. Lila wiped a child's nose. Roland repaired a hinge with a spoon and a nail because the smith was asleep on his feet. Then they went to the ridge, not with a company, but with 3 people, Dax, Marin, and the steward who had at last remembered how to be brave. The western flags glowed like new blood against old rocks. 4 men and 1 woman stood behind them with the particular confidence of people who believe distance is armor. Roland did not step into the open. He stood where his voice would carry and theirs would have to strain. He told the truth the way one flips a coin and lets it ring. We are not weak, we are not divided, we have eyes. He did not tell the truth that would be useful later. We are tired. When they returned, a little girl with a missing tooth handed Lila a wildflower. For luck, she said, then scampered off. Lila tucked it into her braid because it felt more like armor than a knife. Chapter 7. A week passed like a blade being sharpened, slow with small bright sounds. Council did not strip Roland. They did not bless him either. Packs to the west tested gates, saw they were watched, and tested fences instead. Celine visited every house that mattered and was seen both leaving and not leaving, depending on who told the story. One night, as rain dragged its sleeves along the windows, the fire in the great hall jumped without warning. Flame crawled up tapestries as if it had been waiting in them all day. People shouted. Water sloshed. A child cried. Panic tasted like old wine. Roland shouted orders in a voice that turned chaos into bricks. Lila grabbed a rug, flipped it into a heavy roll, and slammed it against a burning banner until smoke hissed like a snake. Marin climbed the second stair, tied a rope to a beam, and swung like a sailor to cut another banner down before it became a ladder for flame. When the last ember died, everyone looked at the same man, Dorn. His face was red with heat and something like shame. He had backed a boy who had made a public fool of himself, and now his rage had nowhere to go but sideways. "You set your own house on fire to prove we cannot keep it," Roland said. Dorn glared. "I have served since before you were born. Then stop acting like a child." Lila expected a knife. She got a laugh instead, bitter and broken. "The first king I loved died in his bed," Dorn said. "This one will not be allowed to." "Not by you," Roland said, and for the first time his voice held no mercy. Dorn left with his jaw clenched. The hall smelled like wet wool and blackened pride. People coughed. Someone began to sing, softly at first, one of those old songs you learn before you know what songs are for. It filled the space the fire had hunted. Later, by the kitchen door, Lila found Celine staring at the rain. "He could have you killed," Lila said. "He will not," Celine said. "He thinks he needs the part of me that tells him the truth he cannot see from where he stands. He has me." "You are his heart," Celine said. "I am his enemy. Both teach. He is unlucky enough to need both." Lila wanted to hate her less and could not, yet the words left a mark she would trace later when the night was quiet. "Do you think Celine should be punished for her schemes, or does she deserve another chance at redemption?" Share your thoughts in the comments and make sure you're subscribed so you see how this power struggle unfolds. Chapter 8. The harvest moon came large and low, a gold coin you could almost reach if you stood on the wall and leaned all the way into the sky. Pack pressed to the edge of the gray forest, restless. It had been too long since the old hunt, the kind where wolves run with the king and come home dirty and fed. Roland stripped to the waist and tied the cord around his wrist that marked him as alpha in the hunt. Lila stood with Marin just inside the trees, a place where women had always stood, not at the front, not at home where you can count losses fastest and hide them slowest. He looked for her before he shifted. He always did now. When his skin changed and muscle surged and the wolf came, he kept his eyes. That was the part that made her chest ache. The gold stayed steady, nothing gone but the plain shell, nothing added but a different kind of body for the same soul. They ran. The pack flowed. Lila and Marin moved through underbrush in a slower, tidier way, knives ready for weeds more than enemies. Owls called. A fox watched them from a stump and did not move when they passed, as if amused by their very serious work. The deer broke left. The wolves broke right. The night made a sound Lila had never heard, as if the sky had gasped. Marin swore. Trap! Shadows moved wrong. Silver flashed where leaves should have, all hidden pieces of a larger shape. Men with nets stepped out of the dark like teeth. Down! Marin barked, and they were. Roland was already there without having moved. That is how it felt. One heartbeat he was a shadow between trees, the next he was in front of Lila, teeth lit with moon. He took a net meant for her and ripped it like bread. Dax appeared from behind a tree and made a man sleep before the man had time to think he was tired. It was a fast fight because surprise only works the first minute when wolves are involved. When it was over, Lila's hand shook in relief, then anger. "They came for women in the trees," she said. "Because they know the men are not foolish enough to be lured," Marin said. "They think women still are." Roland touched Lila's cheek with his wrist, the only clean thing he had. "I will build a gallows for their ideas," he said. "You cannot hang a thought," Lila said. "No," he said, tired. "But you can make a better one and feed it until it is strong." They walked home in a ring of wolves, and the moon looked down like someone listening. Camp met them with bowls of stew that tasted like victory. Lila ate standing up because if she sat she would not rise, and she had things to do like sleep for 3 days and then wake more dangerous. Chapter 9. Council met one last time. Dorn did not come. He had packed his pride into a saddlebag and ridden west to join men who would love him for his anger and not for his sense. Malin came with his staff and the lines on his face like a map of roads no one was sure existed. Celine came in a dress the color of clear sky after a week of rain. Everyone noticed, including Lila, who had learned to see these things as part of a larger game. Malin spoke without fanfare. "We asked for proof," he said. "We received it." 3 trials met. An oath made under blade. Enemies sent and turned away. Pact kept. "We have to decide whether we like the kind of king who tricks us to learn our faces." Roland spread his hands. "I will not pretend again. I have what I came for, the truth in this room." Malin's mouth tilted. "We are old. You are not. If you live long enough, you will become a man who says that with more dust on it." He turned. "Celine, speak." Silence fell like a curtain. She stood and looked at the people she had hoped to rule. Then she looked at Lila, and the fight in her face shifted into something like respect unwillingly given. "I believed I deserved a crown," she said. "I was wrong. I deserved a choice. I was not chosen. I tried to make the choice choose me anyway. That breaks everything we say we believe." No one breathed. A room lives for a noble's honesty like a starving man lives for bread. "The new Luna is Omega," she went on. "I hate what that means about my place. I hate that I am not better." But she crossed the rope while our mouths were full. She told the truth when we played at truth. I will not serve her with false smiles. She paused and smiled anyway, so sharp it cut without blood. I will serve her with my best advice, and I will enjoy it if she hates it. Lila blinked hard. It was as close to peace as they would ever have. It would have to be enough. Malin raised his staff. Then, by the old law and by new sense, the council recognizes Roland as Alpha and Lila as Luna. A sound rose that was not cheer and not relief. It was something like a lung taking its first good breath after being held under too long. People who had decided to leave decided to stay. People who had decided to stay decided to help. That is the kind of magic that keeps a kingdom alive. Roland bowed his head. Lila did not, because she had never learned how. Malin laughed once softly. "Good," he said. "We need one of each." Chapter 10. They wed not in silk but in light. The sacred ground smelled like grass and bread. Children ran in a ring and tripped over their own feet. Wolves lay like river stones at the edge inside. Roland wore a plain coat with the royal mark hidden under the collar where only someone standing close would see it. Lila wore white linen that Marin had stitched with patience that could have fixed a broken treaty. Celine stood at the edge like a thorn that had learned to be useful. Malin spoke the old words and the new ones Roland and Lila had written together the night before, bent over a table with a candle and breadcrumbs. The new law was short: rank will not be a weapon, truth will not be punished, those who serve will be seen, those who lead will be watched. They signed it with the same hands that had bled on the stone. Pack signed it after them, one by one, some with a flourish, some with a cross that took longer than pride should have let them take. When the last mark dried, the wind found the meadow and lifted all the hair on all the arms at once. Even the wolves shivered. The land had a new shape. The feast, Lila danced until her feet forgot the rope. Roland laughed with his mouth open like a boy who had not been told yet what kings must do. Dorn's nephew stood in the crowd and did not smile, but he did not reach for the blade at his ankle either. Later, when the moon was a bowl and the stars were salt, Roland and Lila climbed the west wall and sat with their legs hanging over nothing. "I thought it would feel like a drum," Lila said. "Loud and heavy. What does it feel like?" "A door." "To where?" "To work," she said and laughed at herself. "I am not romantic." "You are," he said. "You choose people over stories. That is romance." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We will be tested again." "Of course. Celine will find new ways to teach us we are fools." "Of course. The West will come." "Of course. Are you afraid?" "Yes." "Good," she said. They sat until the stones grew cold again. Somewhere in the courtyard, a woman was singing the tune Lila's mother had hummed while stirring soup. It made Lila's throat ache in a way that felt clean. Roland's hand found hers. She let it. Epilogue. Years later, the grand hall did not smell like ash. It smelled like bread and candles and the inside of a new book. Children ran under tables, chased by a wolf the size of a horse who had no interest in catching them. Marin sat with her mending and swore at her needle in ways that made the children giggle and the elders pretend not to smile. Celine stood at a pillar, still beautiful, still sharp, still telling someone an unkind truth kindly, which is another kind of service. On the dais, a young woman with blue eyes and hair like wheat listened to a farmer from the east. She did not wear a crown. She wore a clean dress. She wrote as he spoke. When he stopped, she asked 2 good questions and 1 hard one. He left nodding, angry and seen at once. In the yard, a man with gray at his temples and scars on his hands showed a boy how to hold a staff without breaking his fingers. He laughed when the boy tripped and set him up again. He told the boy a poem about horses and then said it had nothing to do with horses and everything to do with listening. At dusk, they walked to the sacred ground. They did this on the same day every year now, not to reenact a law, but to remember how to make one. The circles in the grass looked no older than they had, which Lila liked. It meant the land did not keep their failures as carefully as they did. They stood where they had bled and spoke new words that were mostly old. We will be strong without cruelty, we will be soft without weakness, we will tell the thing no one else will say. The pack spoke the last line with them because they had earned it. We will not make our pride heavier than our neighbor's hunger. They went back to the keep in blue light while bats wrote spells overhead. In the kitchen, Lila stole an apple from a basket, bit it and closed her eyes. It was not as good as the one she had eaten at 9. It was better. Maybe taste grows with a person. Maybe joy does. Roland walked in behind her, kissed the back of her neck and stole half. She let him. "That belongs to the crown," he said solemnly. "This belongs to the woman who carried trays in this room and cried over an apple once," she said. "You are very lucky I share with kings." He laughed and leaned against the table. "We made a good law," he said. "We made a simple one," she said. "That makes it good." They stood there with apple on their tongues and work on their minds and a kind of ease in their bones they would never have believed possible the night a beggar took off his cloak and the world broke open. Outside, rain began, not a storm, just the sound of a roof being useful. On the wall under the West Tower, a new plaque had been hung. It held only 3 lines. "See people as they are. Choose the truth when it costs. Build a door you are willing to guard." Lila touched it every time she passed. So did Roland. So did Celine when no one was looking. So did the boys who had wanted to be men too quickly and the men who had tried to stay boys too long. When the moon came out and lit the courtyard like a story, a wolf lay down at the threshold and slept. The door did not need guarding that night. It did not matter. The guard slept there anyway because some vows are heavy and you carry them with joy. What was your favorite moment from Roland and Lila's story? Was it the night he was mocked as a beggar, or the day they rewrote the laws of the pack together? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful werewolf romance stories.